closed alpha for Battlefield 5 is just finished, and after playing a decent amount of time on it, I've had enough time now to sit down and think about it. I'll be going over some of the features and content from the alpha, the pros, the cons, and some personal opinions from my experience. So just to be clear, this was the alpha, so there's many bugs, glitches and unfinished features, so this will not be able to reflect the final build of the game. I would also like to point out that the progression was locked during this test, so we only got access to a few gadgets and weapons. From what I understand, the build of the game that we had access to may be several months old, so improvements may have already been made since. Some features in this version, such as the ability to pick up and drag your teammate's body to safety to then revive them, have not been included as they're still being worked on. I will include times on the screen and in the description so that for those who want to skip to specific points are more than welcome to do so. So during the alpha we got access to 2 game modes and 1 map set in Norway, the first being Grand Operations and the other Conquest. The Grand Operations plays over multiple days, so for the first day the British are paradropping in and trying to set bombs on artillery placements. The second day consists of capturing points in different sections, just like in Operations from Battlefield 1. The interesting part of day 1 is that it's set during the night, and day 2 is set during the day, so even though the map is the same, it still feels completely different. Conquest on the other hand just seems to be set during the day during this test, but the ticket system appears to be reverted back to the classic version from Battlefield 3 and Battlefield 4 where it counts down. Moving on to gameplay itself, the movement system carries on from Battlefield 1 and improves on it. So not only can you still vault over walls, but you can now dive through windows and jump from higher heights, however you will stumble for a moment. The movement of your soldier feels quick and responsive. Destruction has also been enhanced, so if you destroy a wall, the upper section may collapse if there's not enough support underneath. And from my experience, buildings could not be completely levelled, however, this is likely to keep enough of the cover available. Adding to that point, you can rebuild defences for things like sandbags, turrets, snow trenches, even snowmen. These can all be destroyed and are built in specific areas, so we won't have the building war that you see in games like Fortnite. A key difference in the gameplay is that you can now revive anyone in your squad, even if you're not a medic. There is a punishment for this, however. The animation does take a long time, which does leave you exposed. Medics are certainly not made redundant, however, as they can revive anyone, but they do have an animation, but it only lasts for about a second or two. Health no longer fills up all the way, so instead it only goes up a certain percentage, so you will need to find a health pack or a medic to get you back to full health. You can now no longer just run up to a health or ammo box, instead you'll actually need to pick it up. You run over to it, you press a button and it'll play an animation. Another note is that ammo is more scarce. You start with less ammo than in previous games, but also you start less than what you can actually hold. So if you go up to an ammo box, that will then give you your full amount. Enemy bodies also drop ammunition, so this is going to encourage people that are holding back to actually move up, especially if they don't have a support class nearby. It's definitely more hardcore than previous titles, and it does require more teamwork. So now we move on to the weapons. Weapons will be hard to mention in this particular video, as we've only had a few to play around with. The Assault has had access to the STG-44 and the EMP machine guns. Medics have access to the Gewehr-43 semi-automatic rifle with a sight and the MP40 machine gun. The support had access to the Bren and the NG34 LMGs. Finally, Recon has access to the Kar-98 sniper rifle. Just as a side note, one of the primary things being worked on during the testing is the balancing, so all of this could change. The time to kill in general was actually much quicker than in Battlefield 1. The STG-44 for the Assault actually has an excellent automatic fire rate for short to medium ranges, but is actually super effective in single fire mode for long range attacks. The Medic's Gewehr-43 is pretty much like the rifles from Battlefield 1. Even the reloading when you only fire 1 or 2 bullets is the same. If you fire 1 or 2, you'll only replace 1 or 2. If you fire the full clip, you'll replace the full clip. The MP40 on the other hand is a very stable and easy to use weapon with a very good DPS, and definitely my favourite out of the two weapons that we've got access to. The support has had the biggest change made to them. The Bren LMG could use a bipod, just like, you know, any LMG from previous games, but I did find that the time to aim down the iron sight had been increased, which made them more of a defensive than offensive user. Now the MG34 has had the biggest change made to it. It cannot aim down the sights when standing or running around, so it will always fire from the hip. However, it does force you to use the bipod so that you then can use the iron sights. So you can do this either by being prone or just using a ledge. This is likely due to the insane fire rate of the weapon and the high damage output. The weapon also overheats after 59 bullets of continuous fire, and the animation plays of them actually replacing the barrel of the gun and inserting a new one. It's a neat little extra, but I rarely had this happen, so most players shouldn't need to worry about it overheating too often. For the recon, the Kar 98 feels like the bullets drop far too early for my liking. It's a matter of getting used to it, however, but for me I felt that the medium range was already dropping quite a bit. Quite often I would be aiming for someone's head and it would hit their body, and it wasn't even a far off distance either. Now this could be part of the balancing that they are testing for, or it could be that rifles may have different behaviours. From what I understand, the time to kill has actually been increased from the previous alpha test. After going back to Battlefield 1 last night, I did find that I felt as if I had more opportunity to take cover and fight back, which I do prefer. It gives people a fighting chance and a more tactical approach in my view. Many people have expressed their opinions on both for increasing and decreasing this, so it could very well change for the final release. So let's move on to vehicles. So I'll go over the planes first. So we get access to 3 of them. A fighter for attacking other aircraft, a more heavier version presumably for attacking ground units and light armoured vehicles, and finally a bomber, which drops you traditional bombs and has 2 turrets on board. Now the bomber has been nerfed a lot since Battlefield 1, which I think is great. We had far too many matches where infantry were getting completely annihilated back in Battlefield 1. Now the way that they've done the nerfing is by first of all reducing the availability of bombs. Once they drop their payload, they will need to return back to base to restock, and then it takes time to reload them afterwards. It's just like a floating icon in the sky they go up to, and that begins the reload process. Planes in general actually need to return to the base for repairs, so no longer can they just fly around repairing themselves. They'll need to go back to base, and then it'll allow them to repair. But even at that, it's not a full repair. It will only allow them to repair part of the way, so they may have to fly through multiple times if they're quite low on health. And during repairs, this is probably a good change, during repairs they can now control their aircraft, unlike in Battlefield 1, and quite often fly out the map or crash into a wall, something like that. Now let's move on to the tanks. So we get 3 of them. We've got the Valentine, which is a light tank, Churchill, which is the medium, and Panzer as the heavy. I never really got enough time with them to get a feel for them on how they operate, but they do come with cannons and machine guns. They also have room for a support gunner who gets access to a machine gun internally. Animations do return for getting in and out of vehicles. On a side note, we do have transport vehicles. We've got the SDKFZ 251 equipped with a machine gun on the front and another one on the back. There is also a tracked motorbike for getting around the map. So just before I wrap things up, I want to just mention a few things that need to be improved in the game. First things first, the menu for the loadout screen needs to be reworked. The assault class, when you go to their primary weapon, you can select between the 2 of them. However, if you go to the support class, you can only see one of them. Only way to change it is to go to the archetype and choose a different archetype. I'm not sure whether this is a glitch or whether certain weapons are locked behind different archetypes, but it's certainly not clear at all. Another thing is that the vehicle abilities are not described anywhere at all, which is making people try to second guess what they actually do. Another feature that's been added to the game which I heavily dislike is the squad deaths. If you have everybody wiped out in the squad, then it will not give you the opportunity to be revived by a medic. You will be straight away taken to the spawn screen. The issue with this is when you have a small squad of just 2 people, for instance, and if both of you die, you're taken to the menu straight away. And the problem is this happens so frequently it becomes annoying and potentially loses tickets for your team. Another small nitpicky thing is the stationary gun placements are not in very good places. Most of them seem to be in areas where nobody's ever going to be passing by, so they're pretty much useless for the most part. There's only a couple of them I can think are very well positioned. Another thing is that the dynamite really isn't strong enough. You only get 3 sticks, and if you throw all 3 sticks onto a tank, that only takes it down to 25% of its health. Now, in previous Battlefield games you could use C4 and you threw all that you had down, and that was enough to take out one single tank. And the last thing which needs to be sorted is the icon that you fly through for the base for the planes is white. Now obviously this is a snow map, so it's white on white, and it took me ages to figure out that you had these markers that you had to fly through, so that needs to be reworked. Even if they add a shadow effect, just something so it's a bit easier to see. Overall, people who have been taking parts seem to have liked the changes, and it does make you think more differently on how to approach objectives. It certainly shakes up the formula. I definitely recommend trying out the beta when it comes around, just to get a feel for it for yourselves. One thing I am pleased to hear from DICE is that the future DLC content will be free for everyone in the game, so no one gets left out. On a side note, the customization, we never actually got any access to it during this build, so we have no idea how much there will be to unlock and how much of a grind it will be to unlock the cosmetics. But one thing I would stress is that this is not the final representation, and anything can change in the meantime. Overall, I've had a blast playing it, and I can't wait to actually try the other maps and modes. Hopefully by the time that the beta does come around we'll get access to another map. I think most people are actually, getting a bit sick of the same map over and over again. But I must say I really do enjoy the Ground Operations game mode. It's a nice step up from the Operations mode in Battlefield 1. I can certainly say that I will be getting this game, but I would say that if you're a bit unsure about it, go ahead and try the beta when it launches. Anyway, that's pretty much it for this video, and I hope that I've given you a better idea of what to expect from the game. But do feel free to leave your thoughts and any questions in the comments. I'll be sure to give this video a like. If you do want to see some gameplay or even a replay of the stream that I did the other day, you can click on the link on the screen or in the description. Anyway, that's it from me, and I hope to see you guys in the next video.
Fight's over here, soldier!